Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Chof Ches, Seif Chof Vav. Today we'll talk about taking splinters out and bursting or relieving the pain from a boil. You've got some sort of boil and you want to relieve the pressure and extract the pus and the liquid, if you can do that. We'll also, at the end, we'll talk about band-aids and things like that. That came up yesterday. Okay, so says the Mechaber, Chof Vav. Megale ktsas ritzia. We said yesterday you're not allowed to put a bandage on Shabbos because Gezerah Chazal made, but if you want to undo a little bit of it, mekaneach piamak, and then just wipe the mouth of the wound, megale ktsas, and then you sort of reveal the other half of it, hasheni or mekancha, that's allowed. You can do that. In other words, you're not taking the bandage off and then putting on a new bandage. You're just sort of exposing the wound, part of the wound, and then just clearing it up, and then doing the same on the other half. But don't wipe the actual ritzia itself. Like we said yesterday, you've got a problem with mamareach, of smoothing it over, the material, the ointments that are on the bandage. You've got a problem with mamareach, which we said is a tolda of mamachik. Okay, there's no Mishnah Berurah on that. Chav Zayin. Makesh and Israpa, if you've got a wound which has now healed, you're allowed to put a bandage on top of it. There, putting a bandage on is fine, because there it's just to cushion it's a fragile type of thing. It's just repaired, so therefore you're allowed to put a bandage on it, and it's not caught by problems of refuah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Meshamra v'lo chashin sheyav l'dei shchika samamonim umei ruach she'ena bal kol kacha chashin srapa. You're not so anxious, and therefore you might do something which is not allowed. So therefore, to put a bandage in that situation, once it's already healed and it's just you want to just protect it, that would be okay. And again, when you put the bandage on, we're talking about refuah over here. But in terms of kosher and matzah, you can't tie a bandage with a permanent type of knot. Okay, maybe that's a good opportunity to talk about the band-aid, because we spoke about it yesterday. So we were pretty much right. The band-aid, I'm quoting Rav Simcha Bunim Cohen in his superb series of Hilchos Shabbos. This is volume 1 of the Shabbos Home, on page 76. He says this: as explained above, it is permitted to attach an adhesive item to another surface temporarily, i.e. less than 24 hours, or b'diavad 7 days in case of necessity, but it is forbidden to attach it permanently. Therefore, to put a band-aid, a plaster, over a wound, it is permissible to put a band-aid over a wound, since the band-aid certainly stands to be removed before long. You're not going to live with this plaster on your hand, on your body, forever. However, one should be careful to attach the band-aid only to skin, from where one must ultimately separate it, because it's not going to be there permanently. One should not fasten one band-aid to another, since a person's tendency is to peel the lower one away from the skin and discard both band-aids without separating them from each other. That's the problem. Similarly, when wrapping a band-aid around a finger, one should not fasten one end of it to the other, since he might ultimately slip it off and discard it without separating the ends. So essentially, you've attached it permanently. Rather, one should wrap the band-aid around the finger at an angle so that both adhesive ends touch the skin, and then therefore you haven't got a problem. So that's what we said yesterday. You can put the plaster on. Yeah. Not don't want it to connect. Otherwise, you just rip it off and it'll be there permanently.
What about taking off the?
So very good. So regarding what we spoke about yesterday, so there's a debate about it. But like I thought, there were 3 matirim who are allowed to take the adhesive peel off the bandage: Rav Moshe, Rav Shlomo Zalman, and Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg. All 3 are matir. There are those who are machmir,
if you're machmir, then you can't do anything.
Yeah, so you said yesterday in your home you used to prepare bandages before, plasters before they would take off the thing. Yeah, but there are matirim. There are matirim who would take off who allow you to take off the adhesive peels before Shabbos. Okay, we'll talk about boils and splinters. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Chof Ches. Chof Ches. Let's go. Hamapis shchin b'Shabbos. As a person has some sort of boil, and there's some pus in it, and it's pressuring, and you want to balance the boil. Hamapis shchin b'Shabbos kedei laharchiv piamak derech sharif moisim. Now, if you're doing it so that you're somehow doing something which is medical, that you're broadening the hole, she'emischavim b'fur laharchiv piamaka, That is a medical type of procedure, and you're caught by makbeh patish, and therefore that's also, you can't do that. Because that is a medical procedure. However, but if you're lancing the boil merely to extract the pus or the liquid inside so that it relieves the pressure and it's less painful, then harizeh mutar. So you are allowed to lance a boil on Shabbos to relieve you've got like a little on your finger or something, and you've got a boil and there's a bit of pus there and it's hurting you, so you're allowed to do that on Shabbos. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. So again, if the Mechaber said that if you're doing it and you want to extend the hole to some sort of medical procedure, that's not allowed, that's makbeh patish, but just merely to extract the liquid inside, the pus inside, that's okay. Says the Mechaber, says Mishnah Berurah Peizayin, hamapishchin, hainu shemevakea. So you're sort of lancing it. You're making a sort of a bigger hole or something. Lahaitzi. But if you're that's not allowed. But if you're doing it to take out the pus, that's okay. Ve'ina choishish im tachzer v'tistem miyad. We're not worried that it might seal over straight away. That's okay. V'tov la'asos al yidei ein Yehudi. But it's better to do it by way of a non-Jewish person. Why is that? So if you look at 83, he quotes Rav Karelitz, Rav Nissim Karelitz, shekiven shehet zeh noeg rak v'misha einu mischaven el lahitzi leicha bavad. Since you're only allowed to do it to take out the liquid, and it's hard to know exactly what your kavanah is, so therefore, okay, it's a safety measure. Okay, carrying on the Mishnah Berurah, little hakoitz b'machat. You're allowed to take out a splinter with a needle. Okay, that is the key. Are you allowed to take a splinter out on Shabbos? The answer is yes, but just try and avoid extracting blood, because then you're going to be making a chabura. We'll come back to that in a second. For after mekalkel, even though there is you're doing it by way of mekalkel, and you know there's nothing constructive as it were here. Mikol makom also hu likula alma. Nevertheless, making a chabura is a problem. Is a problem, and it's therefore also likula alma. For after b'shchin hitir is a jabon mishum tzahara. With lancing a boil, we said you're allowed to do that. Since you're able to take the kaitz out, then it's not going to be awesome. Therefore, that would be okay. So let's take a look at two important footnotes. First of all, what about this comes up quite a lot. I got an email a few days ago about this. A person is looking after an older person, and they want to know sort of taking essentials on Shabbos, blood pressure and blood samples and things like that, how to deal with these sort of situations. So the truth is, taking out blood or having an injection on Shabbos where you're trying to find a vein and you're trying to inject something into the bloodstream, the way it's done is that you put the needle in, and you're taking a bit of blood out in order to check that you've got a vein. Now, taking the blood out that's a problem, and you're doing it because you want the blood. You want to see that you've got a vein. So because of that, look at 84. V'zrika hanitenes l'toich havrid. When you want to do an injection into the vein, das hagon Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky she'asura min ha'Torah. You want to be sure that you're injecting into the vein. So therefore, extracting the blood is a siman, and that's what you want. So therefore, Rabbi Dan Abramsky would say that it's an issa deraisa to do that. However, he says, not really. You don't really want the blood here and now, because maybe it's melacha she'ein tzricha legufa. Given she'ein tzarich es sadam, because you don't need the blood, ve'ein motzia le siman bilvad, and it's just a siman. Uveshal is shuva shevet halevi kosov shekiven she'ein mu'unin shapesach al azrika yishai pasuach. Since you don't want, you're not interested that the Pesach should remain open. It's no different to taking out a splinter, which we said previously, shemuta. In other words, it's like taking out a splinter. V'gam im yotze ksas dam ein ele mekalkel v'lefichach mutar adova, and only taking out a bit of blood, and therefore it's like mekalkel. So there are different days. Okay, so taking blood on Shabbos, there are some machmirim saying this is deraisa, and there are some who are mekel.
It's not like a psicration that's obviously it's going to happen.
What we're just talking about the splinter.
Yeah.
So with a splinter, you've got to try and be careful to avoid taking up blood. And if blood does come out, then we're less worried because that was not your kavon, etc. Masha Enkain, when it comes to taking blood, there are different opinions. Okay, so you've got to ask a Rav, you've got to ask a Paisik if we go and take a splinter out on Shabbos. He also says it's mutter. Removing splinters, he says in page 166, it is permitted to remove a splinter on Shabbos. If a splinter is deeply embedded in the skin and can't be reached, one is permitted to cut the skin in order to expose the splinter and remove it. However, one should be careful to avoid making a cut that will inevitably bleed, and to avoid removing a splinter in a manner that will inevitably draw blood.
What's wrong if the splinter's in there on Shabbos?
Okay, if for some reason you want it's painful or something like that. Yeah. Okay, let's just finish off the Mishnah Berurah. Pei Tes. So you're allowed to lance the boil on Shabbos in order to extract the pus, the liquid. Even if there's a bit of blood mixed up in the pus, it's not really a chabura. Don't press the point of opening so that you're going to squeeze blood out. That's a problem. Okay. Harizem muta. So you're allowed to lance the boil. Even though inevitably that's going to make a Pesach. Even if those opinions, the Rambam famously says, when you're being moitzi the lecha eina le gemar melocha v'yesh lo v'letechiyuv makro patish, and there's no makro patish. V'oisen sheyesh lohen nekev bizreya, and a person who's got some sort of wound on his hand shekarin after, and I'm not sure what that is exactly. Im nistam nekev ksas, if the wound is if you can close it up a little bit, tzorich in mutzah litem b'soiche kidneys sheyesh she posuach, to put something there that it remains open. Because there you're clearly wanting it to stay open. Or if it's already open, then therefore maybe it's okay. But if there's a hole there and you want to extend it, it would be also like we said at the beginning of this mechaba. Where are we? Uratia. Uratia mutzalitin ala aftura. You're allowed to put a bandage on this aftura. Kamoshe Kosov Sif Chavzayin, Vasefer Raiv and Mashman to also litin ala uratia. Umutzalakanach v'lohitzi lahem lecha shebasecha. You're allowed to take out the lecha of the pus that is inside. Ve'im yodeh shemoitzi dam kishemekanach lo yichachana b'Shabbos. But if you know the blood is going to come out, then you should avoid it. You shouldn't wipe it to psik ratio. Avol mutzalachlif chatichas beged acher mokum hahu. But you're allowed to put another piece of beged on top of that. Shem lo yachlif asrech, because if you don't change it, it will go bad. For God will cover that brias, and it will go smelly and bad, and it's no good. For gam yesh lo tzar mizeh, and there's also tzar. Va'ayin lekamon siif memche, sorry. V'mashikosav neshom mishabura. Va'osa lochuch shchin. You can't scratch a boil on Shabbos. V'alidezem hachichuch moitzidam sheniv lebasa, because that is going to cause the blood to come out, and that you cannot do on Shabbos. Ve'ein adoim leleicha v'dam she'etanu le'el. It's not the same as lancing a boil before, where there's a bit of a mixture of pus and of blood. B'siv kotem peites lehoitzi to hasam hukonos, because there it's all sort of standing there waiting. It's not absorbed in the bloodstream. It's just sort of external, as it were. Masha'inkin bedam shenivla bebosa. That would be a problem. Just quickly have a look at 85. Footnote 85. When you're removing a splinter, when you're lancing the boil to take out the pus, even if you were to take out, when you take out the splinter, and even if a bit of blood does come out, it's only mekalkel. So, we should all be well. We should all be well, and we should have no. But if a person has a boil or something like that, to do anything medical to sort of heal it, that's a problem. But to just lance the boil, that you take out the pus because there's pressure on it, that would be okay. And even if there's a bit of blood mixed up in it, that's not a problem. Fine. you're not allowed to scratch on Shabbos where it's going to cause bleeding. That should be avoided. If a person has a splinter, you are allowed to remove a splinter on Shabbos, unless it's inevitable that blood is going to come out, and that's slightly different. With regard to a plaster, a band-aid, you're allowed to put a band-aid on Shabbos, but just be careful in terms of kosher and matir to tie it against flesh and do it on an angle, on a diagonal, rather than to wrap the two ends together, because sometimes you just slip it off and therefore it will be a permanent attachment, which is a problem. And in terms of removing the adhesive strips, there are many matirim, Shlomo Zalman, Rav Moshe, and Chaim, who are matir to remove the adhesive strips to the band-aid.
Taking the pus out, isn't that, what level is that from the 1 to 5? Because isn't that like...
No, because it's you're not doing anything wrong. It's just relieving the pressure. I suppose you're right. It's a small thing, but it's not even medical. It's just it's the best, and it's a drabanan, and b'shas we're not geyser for that sort of thing. And it's and the issues at hand is maybe the blood would come out, which is chovel. We're not really worried about that, and it's if you do it, it's makalkel, etc., etc. Say that. Okay.